Hey everyone, and welcome to the Wizarding World Legacy Podcast, where we explore the magic behind the Wizarding World's past, present, and future.
We're your hosts,
Eric
and Jasmine, and today we're going to be taking a look at another very exciting casting announcement for the one and only Albus Dumbledore. Who is Albus Dumbledore?
Albus Dumbledore is perhaps one of the most important characters in this storyline, or era of the magical world, and was a remarkable student during his tenure at Hogwarts in the 19th century.
1892 to 1899.
He was an amazingly accomplished student. All of his professors thought he was going on to do incredible things. Alas! That would not be the case for Albus Dumbledore, as tragedy would befall his humble family.
Who was his humble family?
Dumbledore lived with his mother, Kendra Dumbledore, his father, Percival Dumbledore, and his brother, Aberforth Dumbledore, as well as, at least for a time, his sister, Ariana Dumbledore. Unfortunately, the tragedy that befell their family pertained to the mother and sister and sort of to the father. So it sort of started with Ariana was out in the back garden one day and was seen by some muggle boys doing a bit of magic. And for whatever reason, this provoked those muggle boys to commit a heinous act unto Ariana Dumbledore. The specifics of that act are never actually told to us. Strong implications that it was of a non-consensual activity. We'll just put it at that. This is meant to be a pseudo-PG channel.
It was ugly.
It wasn't good, yeah.
Shitty times.
There goes the PG rating. Enraged by what had happened to his daughter, Albus Dumbledore's father, Percival, went off and attacked the three Muggle boys and bought himself a one-way ticket to Azkaban.
Which, personally, I don't believe it was deserved, but...
The one-way ticket?
Yeah, the one-way ticket.
Yeah,
I think
the
it
hurting
could
the
have been
kids definitely
two
was.
ways at worst. No way at best.
At best.
What were we just talking about the other day?
Crime of passion.
Crime of passion,
Right,
guys.
like in today's American courts, he might have actually been dismissed on a crime of passion.
I'm wondering who his attorney was.
Not a good one.
Not a good one.
Probably Cornelius Fudge.
No, that makes sense.
Or Cornelius Fudge's dad. Maybe it was like genetic incompetence.
Genetic incompetence, but maybe that contributed to why Cornelius and Dumbledore had their...
animosity towards one another. Yeah. After that tangent, that ended up with him landing in Azkaban, and the trauma of the event ended up affecting Ariana in initially unforeseen ways.
Because she was seen doing magic and then the attack happened, I think she attributed the attack to being caused by her magic, which led to her just suppressing her magic altogether. And for those of you who don't know, when a magical child suppresses their magic, it drives a wedge between essentially the child and their magic, creating a entity of its own within the child that is unchecked, raw magic, known as an obscurus.
And it's kind of like a split personality. You've got magical me and regular muggle me.
There would be magical her and squib her.
This would be interesting to talk to J.K. Rowling about. Can somebody who has their obscurus separated from them, once separated, does the person have any magical abilities at all? So, for example, if they showed up at Hogwarts, could they see the castle or would they see the ruins?
Ooh, we'll call Newt up.
We'll hypothesize and theorize in another episode.
When she was at home with her mother, the obscurus sort of exploded out of her, causing her mother's death.
That was at the ripe age of 14 years old. Interestingly, most children with an obscurus don't live past age 10 usually, right? Because it's usually manifests prior to then.
Yes.
Cases apparently when they have lived past that. I think the boy in Africa was like 11 or 12. There's another one that was about 13. And of course we know Credence Barebones, who was actually supposedly a Dumbledore himself, lived well into his teenage years.
Yeah, 17 or 18.
Yeah, and so there's other cases of it in the magical world, but typically speaking, 10 years old.
Yep.
The Credence example does beg the question, is there something about Dumbledores which make them more magically resistant to things that would otherwise kill a mere mortal?
Ooh.
And that's why she lived longer. She had this magical outburst, resulted in the death of her mother, and that had consequences, of course, on Dumbledore. With his father locked up in Azkaban and his mother now dead, being the oldest child of the family, the responsibility of caring for both Aberforth, his younger brother, and Ariana, his younger sister, fell to him. And so this wizard destined to greatness now became kind of like a stay-at-home dad. at a very young age, like 17. As you can imagine, in somebody who was so incredibly smart and talented, a very self-motivated person.
Yes, and he was looking forward to achieving greatness.
This obviously built up resentment towards his family and towards the fact that his talents were being wasted. Would eventually manifest in, I guess, equally harmful ways in the future in terms of his family relationships. Not long after graduating, he comes in contact with another individual that we know about from the pre-Hogwarts days.
The one and only Geralt Grindelwald. No.
Geralt of Rivia.
That's, yes, Gellert Grindelwald. Dumbledore and his family were already living in Godric's Hollow with their mother when she was alive. After she had died, Dumbledore comes back, lives at home, and is caring for Aberforth and Ariana. Then Grindelwald, who was recently expelled
hereby expelled
from Durmstrang School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. He gets expelled. He comes and starts living in Godric's Hollow, and he was talented and
smart and ambitious
himself. Dumbledore, living in this sort of just small little town with his little brother and his little sister.
Little town. Different franchise.
Different franchise. Meets this other person who sort of rivals him in intelligence and their overall ambition. Naturally, there's a whole lot of connection there, and he sort of feels a drive again. And so they become really, really close, and Aberforth starts to take issue with how much time Dumbledore spends with Grindelwald, feeling that he's neglecting his little sister.
So with that being the case, the two of them had a couple of goals. One was to seek the Deathly Hallows. Grindelwald went as far as to make the emblem of the Deathly Hallows kind of his sigil, so to speak. They wanted to do this because they felt it would give them the ultimate power to raise the wizarding world out of its current state of secrecy. Because at this point, the statute of secrecy was already in place.
Right.
One of the reasons why Percival Dumbledore was prosecuted in the way he was, it wasn't just that he attacked Muggle boys, is that he used magic on Muggles in the sight of other Muggles, right? So breaking the statute of secrecy.
All of this to say, Dumbledore had a rough start.
In his final time with Grindelwald, while he was in Godric's Hollow, they were meant to set out and pursue the Deathly Hallows. Aberforth thought this was an abandonment of his duties to his family. This resulted in a huge altercation between the two of them, which started as a verbal altercation and became essentially a three-way duel between Gellert, Aberforth, and Dumbledore.
In this duel, Ariana got in the middle of it and was struck by one of these curses.
Yep. It's not clear, and it's never told to us or revealed to Dumbledore whether it was his curse or Gellert Grindelwald's curse that killed Ariana. Whoever's curse it was that killed her, it also killed the relationship between Gellert Grindelwald and Dumbledore. From then on, he committed never to seeking true power, particularly unchecked power, again. From there,
he goes on to become Hogwarts professor. Starts in Defense Against the Dark Arts, then goes on to become a Transfiguration professor, and then eventually works his way up to become Hogwarts headmaster, as we all know and love him.
After the death of Armando Dippet.
Of course.
He was actually asked to become the Minister for Magic.
Yep.
And turned it down
continuously.
Numerous times.
And then when Cornelius Fudge became minister, he, despite the theoretical feud between their families that we've just come up with.
That we've just made up.
Is not accurate. Cornelius would write him questions and letters all the time.
Seek his counsel. Regularly.
As one of the most important people in the franchise.
Certainly one of
them.
We just had a debate about importance earlier.
I am curious to see who is your
most important person in that era of the Wizarding world.
We're currently debating between Dumbledore and Harry Potter. We're not going to get into it right here, but if you have thoughts, please let us know.
It'd take up the whole thing.
Exactly. We are actually here to talk about the new casting of Dumbledore.
The first time that we're actually introduced to Dumbledore in the series is when we see him, there's a running theme here, in Chapter 1.
The boy who lived.
He was tall, thin, and very old, judging by the silver of his hair and beard, which were both long enough to tuck into his belt. He was wearing long robes, a purple cloak that swept the ground, and high-heeled, buckled boots. His blue eyes were light, bright, and sparkling behind half-moon spectacles, and his nose was very long and crooked, as though it had been broken at least twice. His name was Albus Dumbledore.
So that's where we first meet him. Naturally in the first chapter of the first book.
We get a good description of him.
Yeah.
We get some good physical attributes. You know, we know he's a tall guy. We know he's got this long beard and and silvery hair.
Yeah, and he really sets the tone for how different the Wizarding World is from the Muggle world.
Yeah.
Where we're on Privet Drive.
Cookie cutter,
identical houses, cars, lawns, and fences all the way down. And then...
as normal can be.
Exactly.
And then here's this
walks in.
This very vibrant old man.
Yeah.
Just kind of strolls in on Privet Drive.
An overall vibe. A vibe walks in to Privet Drive.
For sure.
And meets a cat who turns into a lady.
All in stark contrast with their setting.
Exactly. So we get a really good idea of what the magical world looks like compared to the Wizarding World. And Dumbledore sets that tone.
So you need somebody who can really pull that off. And Warner Brothers has decided who they think that somebody is.
Who is that someone? The one, the only.
Lord Farquhar.
Farquaad.
Farquaad?
I think it's Lord Farquaad.
I am Lord Farquaad.
You are correct. It is Farquaad.
Also known as John Lithgow. Welcome, John Lithgow, to the series. Thank you for being here today.
Yes. We're going to be interviewing it. No.
Yes, exactly. Oh my God, can you imagine?
That'd be sick.
Yes, actually, John Lithgow is here with us today. No, he is not. But, John, if you see this, feel free to give us a call.
He grew up in the United States in Rochester, New York.
Ayo.
We're from the northeast of the United States as well. And he was son to Sarah Jane Pierce, who was an actress, and his father was Arthur Washington Lithgow III. And he was a theatrical producer and director. And of course, you have to have that...
pretentiousness, maybe?
Yes, that was the word I was thinking, for sure. Despite growing up under these two parents who were so theatrical in their nature, he actually didn't get involved in acting until he was in college at Harvard University. And he actually ended up getting the...
Fulbright.
Sorry, unlike me. Just half bright. He ended up getting the Fulbright scholarship to study at the London Academy of Music and Dramatic Arts.
Naturally, he spent some time in London. While he was in London, he did some fantastic work, but most of his notable work happened after that.
Correct.
So he has played in a bunch of different things, but I think it's important to note that he's won a lot of different awards, particularly a Tony Award for The Changing Room. And he had multiple Tony nominations after that as well.
Yes.
But then he got divorced.
Yeah, in the mid-70s, he got divorced.
1970s.
Yep. Yes, not the 1870s. He's not really Dumbledore.
You just clear, in case you're wondering, 1970s. Yeah. So he did get divorced.
He got divorced in the 1970s, and he started moving into the world of film rather than theater. And he actually won his first Academy Award in the early 80s and was nominated for multiple Academy Awards subsequently. He then got into television as well as film and built quite a notable career after that.
Absolutely. I've been told that his most notable work is playing Dick Solomon in Third Rock from the Sun.
Yeah, that was definitely the thing that I think for television put him on the map.
Gotcha.
People just know him. Oh yeah, John Lithgow, Third Rock from the Sun.
Got it. I know him as Lord Farquaad.
Yeah, I think for the younger generation, that's definitely going to be the case. And we'll get into it.
Yeah, we got some thoughts there.
Some of his other important shows were things like Dexter, where he played the Trinity Killer. That's a tough role, just generally speaking. You know, he's a serial killer. Not to get into too much dark stuff on this show, but he was a serial killer, but he had to come off as this like lovable, innocent guy, and just the way he played the character was so good. Because he's also an older guy. He takes on roles that are meant to be portrayed by an older guy who you wouldn't think is going around murdering people and just getting away with it. That was a pretty cool role to see him in, and he did a great job. I don't think he was nominated for any awards in that role, but really, really a good role.
In his film work, besides Shrek.
His most recent film was The Conclave, who he starred with...
Voldemort.
Ralph Fiennes, yeah. So Ralph Fiennes, who played Voldemort, plays Contra to him, and we're going to show a great scene about that.
I was going to say, enjoy this clip now.
You are responsible for this, I believe.
No, Emily. You are.
This report is entirely Mendacious. It would never have seen the light of day if you had not broken into the Holy Father's apartment to remove it.
If the report is mendacious, then why did the Holy Father, in his last official act as Pope, ask you to resign?
He did no such thing. As Monsignor Morales, who was at the meeting...
And yet Archbishop Wozniak insists the Holy Father...
The Holy Father, may his name be numbered among the high...
And then he also does something totally different.
A very comedic role in Daddy's Home.
Too.
He's the father to Will Ferrell's character in this funny holiday comedy, and there's some great situational comedy there.
Yes.
That is only pulled off by somebody who just like who's experienced this and has experienced kind of these stereotypes. And just watch the clip. It's great.
It's great. You'll love it.
Did you touch the thermostat? Did you turn it up?
Well, of course not. Did somebody fiddle with the thermostat?
Yes, it's 85 degrees.
85? Do you have any idea how much even a few degrees can impact the gas bill?
Of course I do. It's unthinkable.
Dad? Kurt, what's going on in here? Why is it so hot? Someone fiddled with the thermostat. What?
I think you handled this really well, Brad. I'm so proud of the way you express yourself.
Come here.
Again? Really?
From there, we also want to take a look back at another show that is he's pretty well known for. This is another recent show, somewhat recent show, which would be The Crown. And The Crown did require him to portray a character with a British accent. And that would be Winston Churchill.
Sometimes we have sunshine. Too much sunshine, and they call it a drought. Then we have rain. Too much rain, and they call it a deluge, and find a way to blame us for that, too. It's an act of God, Bobbity. It's weather. And for better or for worse, we get a great deal of it on this island. Frankly, there are more pressing matters to deal with.
He had a lot of praise for his role portraying Winston Churchill. I did watch the show, and I did think he did a wonderful job.
But I think I was really looking to The Crown to see, can John Lithgow pull off a really convincing British accent? Because I think that's my biggest concern with John playing Dumbledore. And so I had watched some of The Crown, and John Lithgow is really doing Winston Churchill's accent, not necessarily just like a full-fledged British accent.
Yeah.
So I still have that sort of question mark of, I know that he is really great with voice work, and so he could make himself sound like other people, but I just haven't heard him do a convincing, straight-up British accent that doesn't immediately take me to Lord Farquaad's castle.
Now kiss me!
Doing a character impression is different than trying to do an accent. And so, to Jasmine's point, is he just great at doing a Winston Churchill impression? Or can he pull off a less specific British accent? Now, he has said he's going to work with dialect coaches, vocal coaches.
Right.
And I think that's very helpful. The other side of that whole equation, though, is the timbre of somebody's voice, the actual characteristics of their vocal cords. And so while you can do a lot up here to shape sound, you are more limited in what you can do in terms of actually vibrating the vocal cords in a way that is distinctly different to your normal voice. But I do wonder if he himself is going to have the training he needs to really change the timbre of his voice, which is the thing that tends to draw your ear back to Fiona, you know, that Lord Farquaad-esque tone. We don't get any descriptors from the book about the tone of his voice, but we do get how his communication is taken by other characters, right? Other people who talk to Dumbledore kind of hang on every word that he says. He has this manner to him, this almost soft but authoritative manner to him, which is another thing that we see with people like Minerva McGonagall and some of the other characters we've talked about, but even more so. We've had a couple representations of Albus Dumbledore already.
Yeah.
We've had 2 within this timeline of Dumbledore, and of course, we've had a 3rd.
Right. Jude Law.
Young Dumbledore.
Young
Dumbledore.
Younger.
Yeah. Jude Law, I do think, plays into, like, his interpretation of Dumbledore, I think did help to portray the characteristics of Dumbledore we learn later in the story.
Right.
He could be kind of manipulative, and he could use his relationship with you to get you to trust him, maybe even more than you should have, and just do what he want on blind faith.
Right. And I'm getting a whole lot of like suave and charismatic, which
Yeah.
I feel like we don't necessarily see.
Yeah, which Jude Law just drips that.
That's true.
Yeah.
He'd be dripping.
So he was actually, I think, in that way, a perfect casting, even if he wasn't visually a perfect casting. But then we've also had Richard Harris.
Yes.
Richard Harris was Albus Dumbledore for the first and second film. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, Richard Harris was also an alcoholic.
Yep, that is.
And a heavy smoker, which was kind of the norm at that time. He wasn't of good health. It's
And
important.
then he died.
And then he died. He reportedly, allegedly, if you will, asked not to be recast and even made this request known to Michael Gambon, who then went on to portray
Dumbledore in the rest of the movies.
So that's rough. But then Michael Gambon No shade, yeah. Michael Gambon went on to represent Albus Dumbledore for the subsequent films.
And they represented him in very different ways.
Quite.
Richard Harris was much more soft-spoken. He was gentle. He was, that fatherly character.
Back again, Harry?
And he casually is eating earwax, and he's like, oh.
Alas, earwax.
Whereas I'm like, if I was eating an earwax jelly bean. But then there's Michael Gambon.
And the big differentiator is this. Did you put your name in the goblet of fire, Harry?
Harry, did you put your name in the goblet of fire?
No, sir.
You asked one of the older students to do it for you?
No, sir.
You're absolutely sure?
Yes, sir.
Physically and verbally assaulting a kid versus like gently saying, hey, is this something you did?
I was watching it. He does like grab him and shove him up against.
I'm surprised he didn't fracture his clavicle.
A little bit.
It doesn't take a lot of pressure, and he's got him.
He's got him good.
You could argue that Michael Gambon's perspective was this strong, powerful, authoritative wizard who people respected and didn't disrespect. Yeah, different vibe. That's not to say that there weren't his soft-spoken moments. No. I do think Michael Gambon did a great job embodying Dumbledore as best as one person maybe can. They also were both, UK actors, didn't have to learn to put on a British accent. They were in age range, or at least their appearance of their age kind of matched what you would have expected from Dumbledore. Richard Harris definitely came off as a bit older, but I think,
Richard Harris was...
and years of alcohol.
Yes. Richard Harris was 70 when they started filming.
And then Michael Gambon was in his mid to late 60s.
Yes. Michael Gambon was actually younger than Richard Harris. Does not look that way. Richard Harris definitely looks older and was older, 70.
So you've got two different portrayals, and I think the casting of a younger man to carry out the film obviously served a couple purposes.
Don't say to keep him alive for
the
whole film series.
Risk of imminent departure from this mortal plane was certainly lessened by having somebody younger.
Yep, that's a fair point.
As the series progresses, we also see a Dumbledore that has to portray a more
physically demanding
character depiction, right? Like we'll take this, right? Fiend Fire.
Fiend Fire.
A very complex and dangerous spell. One of the few things that can kill a Horcrux. A really, really skilled wizard can wield it, but not a meek or weak old man. And we see him doing that after basically drinking the liquid form of the Cruciatus Curse.
Yep.
Right? Like that's basically what that potion was. That brings up another question about our casting.
John Lithgow
is 80. He will be 80 by the time they start filming.
About how long is this series going to last?
They're estimating it will span about 10 years.
Which would make him at the end of the series
90?
90.
You could argue John Lithgow doesn't have to be there all 10 years on set filming. But he kind of does.
So you can't really make that argument because the kids have to age and he has to film scenes with the kids at the right age.
Right. So if you have to film things chronologically, that means that you have to film him, spoiler alert, at the scene at King's Cross Station when he has that conversation with Harry after/during the Battle of Hogwarts. If he, like the late great Dumbledore, does actually perish, that presents a problem. In average life expectancy of a male is younger than he currently is.
So we're already grateful for the time that we have.
Is he going to, one, meet the life expectancy that would be required in order to make it through this entire filming process? And two, have what he needs physically to portray the Dumbledore we see in the later films?
I'm also somewhat curious. Is this really what you want to spend
Your last 10 years?
hypothetically, your last 10 years doing?
At least of your film life.
I mean, how much more time are we guaranteed after 90?
None, because average life expectancy for the average male is a Caucasian male.
So statistically,
Is like
none.
76.
So I don't know. I just like, I think it's an interesting age that we have cast someone at for this. I also think the physicality is something that I have a genuine concern about. Can he do it? Will he simply have the energy to even deliver simple lines?
Right.
Also, we were talking about how are we gonna shoot him off of the astronomy tower?
Yeah, so that seems like a funny and you know, to some people that might seem like, oh, easy fix. You just do a body double, blah, 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 blah. There is a degree of physicality required by the person whose face you're watching. If you remember the scene with Michael Gambon in the lightning-struck tower when he is murdered by Severus Snape.
Avada Kedavra.
He gets cast off the lightning-struck tower. And that is book accurate. Now, where he lands in the movie...
Geography.
Yeah, geographically
not everything
speaking,
is
yeah.
accurate.
He probably would have hit some roofs and bounced down based on like...
Okay,
Yeah.
so
Really
he
messed
does
up.
fall off.
But we see him, right? Now, I'm imagining you have somebody in a harness system with a strong fan blowing at them, so it makes it look like they're falling and their hair's moving and their robes are moving, right? If you look at behind the scenes, this tends to be how they portray these kind of things. They're in a harness. Do you want to put an almost 90-year-old dude in a body harness, yoink him up into the air, blow this strong fan, like industrial fan at him, and have him waving his arms when he probably has shoulder issues by now? My God,
I mean,
you
he's
have
got
to.
every part of the body issues at that point.
Yeah, you're almost 90.
Right.
It's a lot of wear and tear. So that's one thing. Just so people know, this is not to be ageist. I primarily work with people in their later years in my day job. So I can also comment on their health, being a medical provider, seeing people in the setting of cardiology with not good health later in the years because the health problems that come up in that time of your lifespan. You've got a person who lives in America.
America.
The film series is being supposedly filmed at Leavesden Studios, just outside of London, England.
Which is where they filmed the original movies.
It is where they filmed the originals. He's got to take these transatlantic flights every time he's expected to film, right? And yeah, you could argue he's going to go over to the UK, he's going to be put up in this swanky house or whatever, and he's just going to live there while he's filming. Sure, for holidays, for times off of filming, he's going to want to come back. That's a lot for somebody of that age, for anybody to do regularly.
I was going to say, I don't want to do that regularly.
It's a 5-hour time difference. So you've also got to get accustomed to that when you're traveling.
Jesus Christ.
It's a lot to deal with in that span of your life. I would also argue that while Dumbledore is meant to be old, wizards age in a different manner to humans, right? So he's,
true.
what is he?
What is he? 150? Give or take a few years?
Thank you, Ron. And this guy's really at his end of life.
That's not even including like flashbacks.
Oh yeah, de-aging him when he's that old is going to be
Really
much more of
hard.
a challenge. Yeah. Aging somebody up, a little bit less of a challenge. Prosthetics, makeup, digital aging techniques. And yeah, there are digital de-aging techniques, but I will say de-aging is so much less believable than aging when it comes to doing it digitally. So it's so much easier to believe somebody with an older appearance than a younger appearance when done digitally. There's just this fake artificial softening and skin texturing that happens when you de-age people.
With that being said, Lithgow has a marvelous acting career.
Yeah.
Has studied in London, has performed in London,
Theater, television, movies.
has done shows where the entire cast was British and he was the only one that wasn't, and he pulled that off. So there are a lot of things going for him. My main concerns are the accent and his age.
Yeah, accent, age, physicality, and having the person portraying this film saying this is my sunsetting role to a role that is demanding.
Very demanding.
Yeah.
So I hope that they have fantastic doctors on the payroll.
I do too.
Starting now. I hope
Yep.
that he's been given a pretty thorough physical. If he manages to stay in good health and he manages to pull off the accent, I think it's possible. I
Yeah.
think it's possible that he could play a compelling Dumbledore. So we are gonna see what happens.
Yeah, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I'm not necessarily fully optimistic, but I'm not saying we're sunk. We want to know what you guys think. Do you guys think that John Lithgow is a good, great, terrible, wonderful, perfect choice?
Or do you think he's biting off more than he can chew and say, man, this maybe wasn't a good idea?
Exactly. Do you think they'll recast him mid-series?
Yeah.
We want to know.
If the sun does set.
If the sun does set, what are they going to do? And what do you guys think is going to happen? We'd like to know. So make sure that you comment on this video. Make sure you subscribe and hit that bell.
So you never miss a magical moment. And until next time, keep your wand at the ready.
And stay magical.
Finite. Keep your mind at the ready.
Do that. Keep your mind at the ready.
Don't do that.
No. Do it.
Stay dumb and hollow.
Just like me.